Hello and welcome to this Sophos Certified Training course for Sophos XG Firewall. This is Module 7, Email Protection. Sophos XG Firewall provides comprehensive email protection for both server protocols, such as SMTP and SMTPS, and client protocols like POP3 and IMAP. In this module, you will learn how to configure and manage email on the XG Firewall and implement data protection and encryption features. Email protection on the XG Firewall can be configured in MTA mode, which makes the XG Firewall a full mail transfer agent rather than just a transparent proxy. This means that it is possible to configure different email routing options for different domains. In MTA mode, the XG Firewall can spool emails, storing them before delivery. This means that if your mail server is offline, the emails will be queued on the XG Firewall for delivery. The XG Firewall is also able to perform additional validation checks on emails as it receives them, rejecting emails from hosts that send invalid hello arguments or that are missing reverse DNS entries, and supports Sandstorm protection. When in MTA mode, the mail proxy is configured to scan both transparently and when the XG Firewall is configured as an explicit mail proxy. Note, MTA mode is not available on the XG85 or 85W. MTA mode is the default configuration for new deployments. However, devices upgraded from XG Firewall version 15 or the XG85 and XG85Ws will use legacy mode. MTA mode is enabled by default for new installations on supported devices. You can toggle between MTA mode and legacy mode in Protect, Email, General Settings in the SMTP Deployment Mode section. With MTA mode enabled, you will notice three new tabs: Mail Spool, Mail Logs, and Relay Settings. With additional tabs with less frequently used settings, move to the ellipsis menu on the far right. The Mail Spool provides real-time status of emails processed by the XG Firewall that can be queued emails that have been accepted, emails that failed when the XG Firewall tried to deliver them, SPX emails that are waiting for the recipient to register a password, and frozen emails that the XG Firewall has been unable to deliver for 3 days. The Mail Log provides easy filtering of email logs processed by the MTA on the XG Firewall. The emails can be filtered by date, recipient domain, the result, for example if the email was delivered or quarantined, and the reason for the action, such as malware, spam, or data protection. Let's take a look at how email protection is configured. In the SMTP settings, found under Protect, Email, General Settings, you can configure the SMTP hostname and enable connection level protection, including IP reputation and DOS protection. When operating in MTA mode, it is important that you configure the SMTP hostname the XG Firewall uses to talk to other mail servers to a publicly resolvable hostname. If you do not do this, some mail servers may reject the emails being sent by the XG Firewall. Specify maximum file size in kilobytes for scanning. Files exceeding this size received through SMTP or SMTPS will not be scanned. The default size is 1 megabyte. Specify 0 to use the default file size or configure the scanning restriction up to 50 megabytes. The options for handling oversized emails are: accept. All oversized mails are forwarded to the recipient without scanning. Reject. All the oversized mails are rejected and the sender is notified. Drop. All the oversized mails are dropped without notifying the sender. With IP reputation enabled, you can choose to reject, accept, or drop emails that are being sent from known spam senders. By doing this during the message transmission, you can reduce the processing that Sophos XG Firewall is required to do. To protect against SMTP denial of service attacks, you can limit the number of connections and the rate of emails being sent in total and by host. The TLS settings are used to configure connection security between the XG Firewall and the peer email server. When the peer email server supports TLS, the XG Firewall will use it. The configuration is separated into SMTP and POP and IMAP. For both, you can select the certificate to use for the connection and whether to allow the peer email server to use an invalid certificate, for example, a self-signed certificate. Note, while in MTA mode, it is recommended to use server certificate instead of CA certificate that is selected by default. For SMTP connections, you can also specify that a TLS connection is mandatory for specific networks, hosts, and domains. For internal servers, you may choose to skip TLS negotiation. There are additional settings when using MTA mode. Reject invalid hello or missing RDNS. Select this option if you want to reject hosts that send invalid hello or ehello arguments or lack RDNS entries. Do strict RDNS checks. Select this option if you want to additionally reject email from hosts with invalid RDNS records. An RDNS record is invalid if the found hostname does not resolve back to the original IP address. And scan outgoing emails. Enable this to scan all outgoing email traffic. Email is quarantined if found to be malware infected or marked as spam. Out of these options, only Scan Outgoing Mails is enabled by default. Smart hosts can be used to improve the reliability of your email delivery with outbound relays, allowing you to route email via an alternate set of servers, a smart host, rather than directly to the recipient's server. Perfect in environments that are more complex and where email is not directly routed via the Sophos gateway. Smart hosts can be enabled in Protect Email General Settings. One or more smart hosts must be selected, and if required, the port can be modified and credentials for authenticating provided. To be able to send emails out to external domains, you need to configure who can relay emails through the XG Firewall. You can specify servers that can relay email to the Internet, such as an Exchange server, in the Host-Based Relay section. By default, the XG Firewall will block relaying from all hosts. In most scenarios, the Any option can be left in the Block Relay section, and specific allowed hosts can be added to the Allow Relay section. In the Upstream Host section, you can control which networks or hosts the XG Firewall will accept inbound email from. This may be your ISP or an external mail exchange. Finally, Users can be allowed to relay email if they authenticate with the XG firewall. For the MTA to be able to accept incoming email connections, the SMTP relay service has to be enabled for each zone that the connection will originate from. Now that the MTA is all configured, over the next few slides we will look at how to configure the email policies. In MTA mode, the policies are applied to domains, either the recipient or the sender. If the recipient is matched, then it is considered inbound mail. If the sender is matched, it is considered outbound mail. And if both sender and recipient match, the recipient takes precedence. You need to add one or more domains to the policy. You can choose to route the email using either a static host or MX record. If you are using a static host, which is the most common option, you can select one or more servers. Configure the global action for the rule. In most cases, this will be accept, optionally with SPX encryption, but the policy can be defined to reject email. In the next section, you configure the spam protection. You need to enable each section of the policy that you want to configure. First, you configure which spam checks you want to enable. Then, you can define the actions to take for spam and probable spam. The available actions are none, warn, quarantine, and drop. The difference between the premium and standard RBL services are that with premium, no false positives are expected, and with standard, some false positives may be possible. Enabling gray listing can help block more spam at the gateway, as most spam and viruses only attempt to deliver the message once. With gray listing enabled, the XG firewall temporarily denies the first attempt to deliver an email, telling the sending mail server to try again. On the next attempt, the message is accepted and scanned as usual. If a mail server passes this test enough times, it is added to the whitelist automatically. Alternatively, the admin can update whitelist records manually or use inbuilt presets for common senders. The XG firewall can verify if the recipient email address is valid by using an SMTP query to the recipient's mail server. If the email address is incorrect, the email will be rejected, causing a bounce message to the sender. This reduces the load on XG Firewall as it does not have to process the email, and it provides senders, including customers and valued partners, with an instant response if they mistype your email address. If the email address is valid, the message is processed for spam and viruses as normal. In the Malware Protection section, you can choose between using a single antivirus engine or dual engine scanning with both Sophos and Avira. Unlike with real-time activity like web browsing, the small additional latency caused by using dual antivirus scanning is invisible to the end users. It does, however, increase the workload on the device. When a virus is detected, you can choose to take no action, drop the message, which is the default, or quarantine. You can also optionally enable a notification to the sender and choose whether to quarantine unscannable content, such as encrypted attachments. Sandstorm can only be used with email protection in MTA mode and is enabled in the SMTP policy. You can limit the size of files that are sent to Sandstorm for analysis. The default is 10 megabytes, and this is the maximum value. The File Protection section allows you to select the types of files you want to block from a pick list. This will automatically populate the MIME whitelist with file types. You can select file types from the MIME whitelist, and those file types will be allowed. All other file types in the list will be blocked. You can also configure to drop messages that exceed a specific size, measured in kilobytes. The Data Protection section allows you to select a data control list and apply an action to matching emails. The available actions are Accept with SPX, which also allows you to select a template to use, and Drop. You can additionally choose to notify the sender. Here, you can see the policy that we have configured, which shows you what actions have been configured for each of the sections of the policy. POP and IMAP scanning has a single malware scanning policy that can be edited but cannot be deleted. This policy allows you to select single or dual antivirus engines or to disable malware scanning. The POP and IMAP content filtering policies are matched on the sender and recipient. Messages can be filtered based on whether the email is detected as spam or probable spam, or part of a virus outbreak, the source network or host of the email, the message size, message headers, or no filtering can be applied if you want to apply the action to all messages. The actions available for POP and IMAP are to either accept the message or add a prefix to the subject line. We will now take a look at the differences when configuring email policies in legacy mode. There are two main differences. The first is that the SMTP policies are split into separate malware and content scanning policies. The second is that policies are configured based on the sender and recipient. The configuration of POP and IMAP rules is the same for both MTA and legacy mode. As well as scanning email for malware and spam, Sophos XG Firewall can help prevent confidential data being sent out by mistake. Sophos XG Firewall comes with predefined content control lists, or CCLs, created and maintained by Sophos Labs, which can be used to detect confidential and sensitive data, including medical and financial data. The CCLs are categorized by type and region, making it easy to select the rules that are most relevant to you when creating your own policies. Secure PDF Exchange, or SPX, provides an easy way to send encrypted emails without the need to exchange keys or certificates with the recipient. The original email is converted to a PDF along with any attachments, and then encrypted. SPX supports AES 128-bit and 256-bit encryption, so you can be sure that your data is completely secure. There are two ways for an email to be encrypted by SPX. Firstly, when Sophos XG Firewall detects the X-Sophos SPX Encrypt X header, this is added to an email using the Sophos Outlook plugin. The plugin can be downloaded as an MSI from the web console in Configure Authentication Client Downloads, and also from the user portal. The other encryption trigger is when the email matches a scanning rule where an SPX template has been selected. The SPX template defines how the encryption password will be set, the level of encryption to use, and the email template that will be used. The options for setting the encryption password are specified by sender, where the sender provides a password in the subject field, which is removed as it passes through the firewall. Generated one-time password for every email, where the firewall will generate a new password for each email and send a copy to the sender of the email. Generated and stored for recipient, which allows the firewall to generate a password and save it for that recipient. A copy is still sent to the sender so they can communicate it to the recipient. And specified by recipient. In this case, the recipient receives a notification email containing a link leading to the password registration portal to set a password. After registration, the recipient is able to view the current encrypted mail and any future encrypted mails using the same password from this or other senders from the same organization. For the sender-specified and system-generated passwords, the sender is responsible for communicating the password to the recipient. This would usually be done via a separate channel of communication, for example by SMS or phone. We'll now take a look at the workflow for the different ways the password is set, starting with where the password is specified by the sender. In all of these examples, the email will be encrypted because it matches a scanning rule created on the firewall. 1. John sends a confidential email that will match a scanning rule on the firewall, which has an SPX template selected. He includes a password in the subject line. 2. The firewall receives the email and converts it to a PDF, encrypts it, and then attaches it to a template email. This email is sent to Kate and explains to her how SPX works. 3. Kate receives the email with the encrypted PDF attached, but doesn't have the password to open it yet. 4. John needs to give the password to Kate via a separate and secure channel. This could be over the phone, via SMS or IM. 5. Kate can now decrypt the email using the password from John. Now let's look at the case where the password is generated by Sophos XG Firewall. 1. John sends a confidential email that will match a scanning rule on the firewall which has an SPX template selected. 2. The firewall receives the email and converts it to a PDF, encrypts it, and then attaches it to a template email. This email is sent to Kate and explains to her how SPX works. 3. Sophos XG Firewall sends the encryption password to the sender. In this example, that is John. 4. Kate receives the email with the encrypted PDF attached, but doesn't have the password to open it yet. 5. John needs to give the password to Kate via a separate and secure channel. This could be over the phone, via SMS or IM. 6. Kate can now decrypt the email using the password from John. If the option to generate the password once and store it has been selected, then the next time an email is sent to Kate, she can use the same password to open it up, without John having to resend a new password each time. Finally, let's walk through the process when the recipient creates their own password. 1. John sends a confidential email that will match a scanning rule on the firewall which has an SPX template selected. 2. The firewall receives the email and checks to see if Kate has a password for encrypting the email. If there is no password for Kate, the firewall sends her an email with a link to the self-registration portal and asks her to set a password. 3. Kate receives the email and follows the link to the self-registration portal where she creates a password. 4. The XG firewall encrypts the email with the password Kate created and sends it to her. 5. Kate receives the email and can decrypt it using the password she had set at the portal. The next time an email is sent to Kate, it will be encrypted and sent to her using the same password. With the SPX template created, you can now configure SPX and start using it. In the SPX configuration settings, you can select the default template. This is the template that will be used when an email is encrypted because the user has requested it with the Outlook plugin or when the X header has been added in another way. You can also configure the reply portal settings. These are how long the reply URL will be active. Once the URL has expired, the reply button in the encrypted PDF will no longer work. The hostname to use for the reply portal URL. If no hostname is selected here, then the XG firewall will default to using the LAN IP address. You can restrict access to the reply portal to only a list of specific IPs, and the port used for the reply portal can also be customized. The SPX reply portal allows recipients of SPX encrypted emails to ensure that their reply is secure, even when they may not have SPX or another email encryption mechanism in place. To access the reply portal, the recipient clicks the reply button in the encrypted PDF. The reply portal is web-based and runs over HTTPS on port 8094. The SPX reply portal is enabled in the SPX template, which means that it does not have to be enabled for all people receiving SPX emails, only those that use the template. This would be configured in the email policies. You can optionally also include the original message body in the secure reply. However, we would recommend only doing this if you are also restricting access to the secure reply portal to a set list of IPs. In addition to administrators being able to manage the quarantine through the web console, there are two other methods which allow users to manage their own quarantined items: Quarantine Digest emails and the user portal. Let's look at the Quarantine Digest emails first. The Quarantine Digest email contains a list of newly quarantined emails that have been quarantined since the last digest. When enabled, the firewall can send the Quarantine Digest on a selected frequency, either every set number of hours, daily at a set time, or only on specific days at a set time. For each email in the Quarantine Digest, there is a link that can be used to release the email. Please note that the Quarantine Digest will be created in the language which is used within the web admin. In the user portal, all emails quarantined for that user can be viewed. Users cannot release emails that are infected, as this puts the internal network at risk. Quarantined emails can be filtered based on the reason they were sent to the quarantine and there are text filters for searching by sender and subject. Emails can be released individually using the icon on the right, or multiple emails can be selected and released together. Complete the following tasks in Lab 7. Task 7.1, Enable and configure quarantine digests. Task 7.2, Configure an email protection policy. Task 7.3, Configure data control and SPX encryption. Task 7.4, User quarantine management. Prior to completing these tasks, you must have completed all steps up to the end of Lab 6, Task 6.5. Now that you have completed this module, you should complete Module 8, Wireless Protection.